The sun struggled through thick clouds, painting the dusty town square in muted gray. She stood near the center, clutching the documents tightly, edges damp from her nervous grip. The papers could change everything, yet her chest tightened as she felt the town's gaze. Well, look what the wind blew in," muttered a man from the porch of the general store. He spat to the side, eyes flicking over her dress and worn boots. A woman snorted behind him. Didn't know someone like her could even hold papers without trembling. She lowered her eyes, cheeks burning, the edge of her shawl shielding her face. She whispered to herself, though it was lost in the murmurs. "They can't take this away, not yet. You can't even walk straight," a boy jeered from the sidewalk, kicking a small stone. "Why bother?" The sheriff leaned against the post of the saloon, arms crossed. He said nothing, but his silence felt heavier than any words. From across the street, the cowboy's figure was steady. His hat tilted low, eyes focused on her, expression unreadable but unshakably calm. She felt a flicker of something, hope, maybe, but it was cautious, almost painful to trust. "Look at her hands," a woman whispered, voice sharp. "All trembly. She's probably never done honest work in her life." Her grip tightened on the documents, knuckles white. She wanted to shout, to demand respect, but her voice faltered. The papers felt heavier than ever, as if the town's scorn weighed on them too. "You should leave before someone steps on you," the boy added, a cruel smirk on his sunburned face. A deep, steady voice cut through the whispers. "Leave her be." Heads turned. The cowboy had crossed halfway down the street, his boots crunching on gravel. He said nothing more, but his presence drew a tense silence, like the calm before a storm. "Who's he?" someone muttered. "A friend of hers?" She didn't answer. Her lips quivered, and her eyes filled with tears she refused to wipe away. She felt the wet sting of humiliation prickle along her skin as her shawl slipped from her shoulders. "Pathetic," another man called from the saloon steps. "Always sniffing around, thinking she's better than the dirt under our boots." The rain started as a whisper, tiny droplets tapping against the wooden planks of the boardwalk. She felt the cold immediately, soaking her dress, clinging to her skin. Her teeth chattered, but the tears didn't stop. "Here," the cowboy said quietly, stepping closer and holding out a handkerchief, his eyes locked on the townspeople. "Take this. Stay calm." She hesitated, then took it, trembling. Her fingers brushed his briefly, and for a moment, the rain and the jeers seemed to fade. "You think that'll save her?" the boy sneered, stepping forward. "She's a joke, even with that fancy rag." "She's not hurting anyone," the cowboy said, voice low but firm. "Leave her alone." The sheriff twitched, but still didn't intervene. She realized she couldn't rely on him, couldn't rely on the town at all. Only this man, silent, steady, protective, seemed to see her as more than a target. "Get out of here," a woman shouted, pointing at her. "Before you ruin your life for good." She felt something inside break, a mix of shame, fear, and anger. She wanted to turn and run, but her feet felt rooted in the mud, soaked boots heavy. Her shawl was plastered to her shoulders. She shivered, the cold rain mixing with tears. The cowboy didn't speak again. He simply moved to shield her from the worst of the passing townspeople, standing as a silent sentinel. His eyes never left hers, giving her courage she didn't know she had. "They'll laugh at you forever," a voice whispered, almost drowned by the rain. "Everyone knows your place." She dropped her gaze to the documents, soaking through her fingers. She could barely hold them, but she clutched them tighter, willing herself not to let them slip. Her heart hammered, wet hair plastered to her face. A child peeked from behind a post, eyes wide. The townspeople scattered as the rain picked up, running for shelter. Her shivering form was left alone, except for the cowboy beside her, silent but present. She took a deep, ragged breath, shaking from cold and humiliation. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the square in stark white. She pressed the documents to her chest, trying to steady her trembling. The cowboy finally spoke softly. "We'll get through this." one step at a time. She nodded, unsure if she believed him yet, but the first flicker of hope broke through the storm that had beaten her down. The town was cruel, the rain relentless, but for the first time, someone saw her. And for now, that was enough. The mud pulled at her boots with every step, water seeping through the worn leather. She pressed the shawl tighter around her shoulders, teeth chattering as the wind carried whispers from the town. "They'll talk about you for weeks," someone called from a porch, voice sharp over the rain. She ignored them, lowering her gaze to the slippery road. "I have to keep moving," she whispered to herself. Her fingers flexed around the documents, damp edges threatening to curl. She feared what the town might do if they caught sight of them. "Always carrying something bigger than you can handle," a boy shouted from behind a barrel, laughter in his voice. "Why even try?" She swallowed, her throat tight, but kept walking. "I have to," she muttered under her breath. Each step was a reminder of every insult, every glance that had made her feel small. Memories flared, schoolchildren pointing, cousins mocking, neighbors whispering at the fence. She clenched her teeth, anger and shame twisting inside her. The cowboy appeared then, quiet as a shadow along the fence line. He held a thick blanket in one hand, a steaming cup in the other. His eyes met hers, calm and steady, with no judgment. "Here," he said softly, holding the items toward her. "Take it." Her fingers trembled as she accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the rain. "No need for thanks," he said. "Just stay warm." A woman's voice carried from a porch above, sharp and cutting. "She's nothing but trouble. Everyone knows it." "She doesn't belong here," a man added from behind a fence, nodding. "Best she goes back where she came from." She lowered her eyes, hiding behind the blanket the cowboy had draped around her. He didn't step closer, didn't speak again, yet the quiet presence gave her courage to keep walking. She tucked the papers inside her shawl, pressing them against her chest. "Look at her," the boy called again, kicking mud. "Still clutching that worthless paper like it matters." "It does matter," she whispered, shaking, though no one could hear. "It has to." "You're soaked through," the cowboy said, tilting his head toward her. "Keep moving. You'll catch your death if you linger." She nodded, boots slipping in the mud, and stumbled toward the small cabin she rented at the edge of town. The wind cut through her hair, rain dripping from her soaked sleeves. Every laugh, every sneer from the townspeople felt like needles pressing into her back. "Can't even walk straight," a woman shouted from a porch, voice full of mockery. "Always looking pitiful." She faltered, gripping the door frame when she reached her lodging. Inside, the wooden floorboards creaked under her weight. She pressed the documents into the corner, covering them with a scrap of cloth. Her breath came in ragged bursts. "You're pathetic," the boy's voice echoed faintly from outside. "Even your shadow's a joke." She sank to the floor, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The cup of coffee rested beside her, steam curling lazily in the dim light. The flickering lantern on the table cast soft shadows, dancing across her face. The cowboy leaned against the doorframe, silent but watchful. "Drink it before it gets cold," he said quietly. Her fingers closed around the cup, warmth seeping into her hands. I didn't know anyone would help me," she admitted, voice trembling. "You'll find a few," he said simply. "Not everyone is cruel." The rain tapped rhythmically against the roof, a steady drum that matched the pulse in her chest. She closed her eyes, imagining the warmth of the cabin, the quiet of the ranch, the promise that she might survive the storm. "Why does everyone hate me?" she murmured, voice breaking. Memories of childhood cruelty flooded her mind again, the teasing, the laughter, the whispered names she could never forget. "Why can't I be left alone?" He knelt slightly, eyes level with hers. "They only have power if you let them," he said softly. "Don't give them that." She pressed the blanket to her face, sobbing quietly. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers, rolling slightly on the floor, yet she barely noticed. Slowly, her sobs quieted, replaced by a trembling sort of relief. They can't touch what's yours, he said, voice firm but gentle. Hold on to that. She looked at the documents, hidden safely beneath the shawl, and nodded. I will. The lantern flickered again, shadows stretching across the walls, giving the small room a sense of life beyond her fear. Outside, the rain softened but didn't stop, a reminder that storms could pass, but their marks lingered. You'll make it, he said, standing, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. One day at a time. She nodded, sipping the coffee, letting the warmth spread through her, anchoring her in the moment. The first flicker of hope returned, fragile but real, a thread connecting her to safety and dignity. The town's voices faded into the distance, replaced by the quiet rhythm of rain and lantern light. She wrapped herself tighter in the blanket, curling on the floor, imagining a life where she might not always feel despised. And for the first time that day, she believed it might be possible. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the plains gold. She stepped from the wagon onto the dry, dusty path, boots crunching on gravel. The ranch spread before her, wide fields, worn barns, and the faint smell of hay and livestock. She swallowed hard, unsure if she belonged here. You'll be working with me, the cowboy said, voice steady as he held the gate open. Take it slow. No rush. She nodded, fingers tightening around the blanket still draped over her shoulders. I can do that, she murmured, unsure if she believed it. A man appeared from the barn, wiping sweat from his brow. Morning, he said gruffly but not unkindly. You're the new helper? Yes, she replied softly, bowing her head. She felt the weight of his gaze, assessing, yet not cruel. Name's Jed, he said, extending a calloused hand. She shook it tentatively. We don't bite much around here. A woman emerged from the kitchen doorway, apron dusted with flour. I'm Clara, she said with a smile. Breakfast is almost ready. Don't worry, nothing burns in my kitchen while I'm around. Thank you, she whispered, blinking at the warmth in Clara's eyes. The cowboy, her silent protector, led her to the barn. Horses shifted and nickered, tails flicking. She stiffened at the first horse, startled by the snort and movement. Easy, he said, crouching slightly. Take it slow. Reach with your hand, not your whole arm. Let it see you. She followed his instructions, fingers trembling as she offered feed. The horse nibbled gently. Relief surged through her. It's okay, she said, voice soft. See? Not so bad, he replied. We all start somewhere. A young calf bleated nearby, making her flinch. She bent awkwardly to fill a bucket with water. It spilled slightly, soaking her sleeves. Careful, he said, catching her hand as she steadied the bucket. Steady. You've got this. She nodded, cheeks burning, not from shame this time, but effort. The hands she had feared judgment from were now guiding, patient. Don't worry if it's slow, he said, voice calm. It's supposed to be. You'll learn. She glanced at him, hesitant, lips pressed tight. I'm not used to people being kind, she admitted. Kindness isn't a weakness, he said simply. It's strength. A dog padded toward them, tail wagging. She knelt, letting it sniff her fingers. For the first time that morning, a small smile touched her lips. Jed called from the other barn. You'll need to clean the stalls next. Don't overthink it. Just go one step at a time. Yes, sir, she replied, voice steadier now. She moved to the stalls, broom in hand, shoveling with deliberate care. Sweat clung to her back, muscles protesting, but the rhythm brought a strange comfort. Clara brought a tray of coffee and bread, setting it beside her. Take a break, she said. You'll need strength if you're going to make it through the day. Thank you, she said again, feeling a small flicker of gratitude. No one mocked her here. No one whispered cruelly. Even the animals seemed accepting. The cowboy approached, hands in pockets, watching without intrusion. Don't hurry through it, he said. Learn it right and it'll stick. You'll be better for it. She nodded, muscles aching, and managed a weak smile.
I'll try.
Good, he said. That's all anyone can ask. Hours passed. She fed horses, mucked stalls, carried buckets, and helped mend fences. The work was hard, exhausting, yet each small success brought a quiet sense of accomplishment. When she stumbled, the cowboy steadied her, hand on her elbow, never rushing, never scolding. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the open fields. She paused at the fence, wiping sweat from her brow, and watched the horizon. The sky burned in orange and pink streaks, wide and endless, the wind carrying the faint smell of grass and earth. "It's beautiful," she said softly, voice catching with awe. "It is," he said quietly beside her. "Out here, you see things differently.
Hard days, yes.
But it's honest. You learn to take pride in what you do." She swallowed hard, remembering the town's cruel words, the laughter and scorn. The weight of humiliation pressed on her still, but it was softened by the calm of the open land. I think I could get used to this," she admitted, tone hesitant, almost afraid to hope. "You will," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "One day at a time. You'll find your place." She stayed at the fence a moment longer, the sun sinking into the plains, painting everything in gold and shadow. The work, the quiet, the steady presence of the cowboy, all of it felt different from the town she had fled. She turned back toward the barn, boots sinking slightly into the soft earth, heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Even with shame still clinging faintly, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Belonging, or at least the possibility of it. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a life where kindness, patience, and steady hands could guide her through the storm. The sun disappeared behind the distant hills. The ranch fell quiet, except for the low calls of animals settling in for the night. She stood, shoulders square despite exhaustion, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me stay." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The quiet reassurance in his stance said enough. She turned toward the barn, fading light casting long shadows across the dusty paths, and felt the first flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could belong here. The morning sun broke over the horizon, spilling gold across the fields. She moved quietly through the barn, brushing hay from the stalls. Each chore she completed felt heavier at first, then lighter as rhythm settled into her hands. "You're getting faster," the cowboy said from the doorway, watching her stack feed bags. "Don't rush. Steady wins the day." "I'm learning," she admitted, wiping sweat from her brow. Her voice was soft, uncertain, but the words carried pride. "You'll do fine," he replied. "We all start somewhere." A bucket tipped slightly, water sloshing over the edge. She jumped, and he reached out, steadying it. "Careful," he said, eyes calm. "It's easy to spill, but you're handling it well." Her fingers gripped the handle tighter. I didn't know I could do this." "You can," he said, one step at a time. Outside, the field stretched wide, shadows long and golden. She felt the earth beneath her boots, steady and real. She paused at the fence, letting the wind wash across her face. For the first time in weeks, she breathed without tension. A soft voice called from behind a fence post. "Hello." She turned. A small child from the town peered through, fingers gripping the wood. "Hi," she said cautiously, voice hesitant. The child waved shyly. I didn't know you'd stay here." I'm learning," she said, unsure what else to offer. The child's eyes were wide, curious, innocent. Nothing like the townspeople's scorn. "That's good," the child whispered. I like the animals here. They're nice." "They are," she agreed, smiling faintly. "They listen better than people sometimes." The child giggled, stepping back before disappearing around the corner. She watched, heart lightening. A small spark of connection had formed, proof that not everyone she met would hurt her. "Lunch is ready," Clara called from the kitchen doorway. "Come eat before it gets cold." She nodded, following the cowboy. The air smelled faintly of bread and stew. She sank into the chair, hands wrapped around the warm mug. "You're quieter than most," the cowboy said softly, seated across from her. "Not many stick with the work at first." I like the quiet," she admitted. "It helps me think." "That's not a bad thing," he said. "Sometimes, thinking is what keeps a person alive." She looked down, tracing the rim of the mug. Thoughts drifted to the town, whispers of gossip, voices calling her name with sneers, rumors of her staying here. A shiver ran down her spine despite the warm kitchen. "They're talking about me again," she muttered, voice low. "They always will," he said, tone steady. "Don't give them power over you. Let it roll off." "I try," she said, but the fear lingered. "I don't want it to reach here, not here." He nodded. "You're safer than you think. But vigilance isn't weakness. Remember that." Afternoon brought chores beyond the barn. She guided horses across the shallow creek, water rippling over her boots. Her hands shook when the current tugged at her balance, and he reached out, steadying her. "Keep your eyes forward," he said, voice firm. "Not down at the water. Let your legs do the work." She did as instructed, chest pounding, heart racing. I think I can do this now," she admitted when she reached the opposite bank. "You did," he said, quietly proud. "That's the first of many." Later, she repaired a tear in her boot, hands fumbling until he knelt beside her. "Here," he said, adjusting stitches. "Small fix, but it matters. You'll learn the rest soon." I never did anything like this before," she admitted, embarrassment mingling with gratitude. "Then you're learning something new every day," he said simply. The sky shifted as afternoon turned to evening. Clouds gathered, dark and heavy on the horizon. A low rumble of thunder echoed across the plains. She paused at the fence, heart tightening. "A storm's coming," she said. I hope no one from town." "They won't reach us," he said, tone calm but watchful. "We'll keep them away. Focus on the work you've done today. That's what matters." She nodded, but unease lingered. The memory of ridicule, the weight of whispers, and the sting of town cruelty refused to fade completely. Her fingers traced the shawl draped over her shoulders. Even here, far from the square, she felt a twinge of fear. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the barn and the fields. She flinched, gripping the fence post. I hate storms," she whispered. "They're part of life," he said. "Harsh sometimes, yes, but they pass. You'll survive this one too." She exhaled, letting the wind tug at her hair, letting the tension ease fractionally. She remembered the child's wave, the animal's calm presence, the warmth of Clara's kitchen, and the steady guidance of the cowboy. Little by little, trust had begun to root in her heart. "Thank you for staying nearby," she said softly, unsure if he would hear. "I'll be here," he replied simply. "Always when it counts." The first drops of rain fell, tapping against the barn roof, mingling with distant thunder. Shadows stretched across the plains, flickering in fading sunlight. She tightened her shawl, eyes scanning the horizon, wary yet reassured. One more step, she thought. One more day. The storm would come, but she had shelter, guidance, and a thread of hope to cling to. Even with fear lingering, a quiet sense of possibility had begun. The town's whispers were still out there, but here, among wide fields, steady hands, and small kindnesses, she felt, tentatively, that she might survive the storm yet. The wind lifted, carrying the scent of earth and rain, and she stood at the fence, shivering but upright, ready to face whatever was coming next. The morning sun glinted off the barn roof, but the air felt heavy with tension. She carried a stack of feed bags toward the stalls when voices rang out, harsh and familiar. "Thought you'd hide away, didn't you?" one of the men called, stepping from the wagon with a crude grin. Her heart froze. She set the bags down, palms trembling. I'm just doing my work," she said softly, voice barely carrying over the wind. "Doing your work?" Another sneered. "Never saw anyone like you handle chores without falling on their face." She swallowed, biting her lip, cheeks burning. Memories of the town's ridicule surfaced, and a shiver ran down her spine. She pressed her fingers to her shawl, hiding the small tremor of fear. Didn't think anyone would take you in, did they? The first man said, stepping closer. His boots scuffed the earth, and he leaned forward, eyes cold. The cowboy appeared silently behind her, tall and steady. His hat shaded his eyes, and his hand rested lightly on the edge of the saddle. He didn't speak at first, but the presence alone shifted the air. "You'll leave her alone," he said finally, voice low, firm. The men laughed, dismissive. "Oh, look, her cowboy savior. Didn't know anyone cared," the second one said, sneering. "I said leave her be," he repeated, step forward, shoulders squared. The wind tugged at his coat, but he didn't waver. She felt her chest tighten. The fear had gripped her moments ago, but the cowboy's calm authority offered a shield she hadn't known she needed. "She's useless," a man said, voice dripping with contempt. "Just like we said." Her hands balled into fists at her sides. Something inside her stirred, fragile yet insistent. She straightened her shoulders. "I'm not useless," she said, voice quiet but firm. The bullies laughed, but it was uneven this time. She met their eyes, and they faltered for the first moment. Her voice grew steadier. "I work hard. I'm learning. That's enough." "You talk too much," one man snapped, taking a step toward her. The cowboy moved subtly, placing himself between her and the intruder. "Step back," he said. His eyes were hard, unwavering. "Or you'll regret it." She glanced up at him, feeling courage ripple through her. She realized she wasn't alone. His presence gave weight to her words, and for the first time, she felt capable of standing her ground. "Fine," the first man muttered, glancing at the others. "She's not worth it. Let's go." "Wait," she said, voice steady. "I don't want your approval. Just leave me and this place alone." The cowboy nodded slightly, silent approval. The men grumbled but stepped back, retreating toward the wagon. Their boots kicked dust, and the wagon creaked as they loaded supplies without another word. She exhaled slowly, muscles relaxing, though the tremor in her hands lingered. She pressed her shawl to her chest, eyes on the retreating wagon. Her chest swelled, a mix of fear and pride. They can't hurt me here," she whispered, disbelief threading her voice. "Not if he's here." The cowboy's voice broke the silence. "You're stronger than they'll ever understand." She looked at him, blinking, unsure if she deserved such words. I think I'm beginning to understand," she said softly. A gentle breeze stirred the hay in the barn, and the animals shifted, sensing the tension had lifted. She bent to pick up a feed bag, and the weight felt lighter than before. She straightened, stacking it carefully, confidence growing with each movement. "They didn't scare you off," he said, tilting his head slightly. "That's good." I won't let them," she replied. The words surprised her. Quiet, determined, real. "Good," he said simply. "That's all anyone can ask." The rain from the previous day had left the earth damp, giving off the faint smell of wet grass and dust. She inhaled slowly, letting the familiar scents anchor her. The town's cruelty had followed her here, but it no longer felt all-consuming. She could push back. She could claim her space. "Why would they even come here?" she asked, voice low, uncertain. "They're afraid of what they can't control," he said. "They pick on the weak, and you weren't weak today." Her lips curved into a tentative smile. Maybe I'm not, after all." He tipped his hat slightly, a small gesture of approval. "You're learning," he said. "Step by step, you'll see." She glanced at the horizon, sun beginning its descent, golden light casting long shadows across the fields. The weight of past humiliation still lingered, but the sting was less sharp. Courage had begun to grow, and a sense of dignity settled in her chest. "They'll be back," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Let them," he said. "You've already faced them today. That's what counts." She exhaled, letting the tension drain. Her hands still shook slightly, but she could feel herself steadying. For the first time, she realized she could meet cruelty without collapsing. The cowboy stepped aside, letting her move freely among the animals. She brushed hay from a stall, stacked feed, and carried buckets with care, every movement infused with newfound strength. As the last wagon disappeared over the hill, she pressed her hands to her chest and whispered, "I did it. I stood my ground." He nodded, quiet but present. "You're stronger than you think," he said, voice low and certain. She looked at him, heart swelling. The town could mock her, sneer, and gossip, but here, on the ranch, with steady hands guiding her and the wind across the plains, she began to understand her own power. For the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of dignity. The first light of dawn spilled across the plains, casting long shadows over the fence lines and the barn. She adjusted the saddle, hands steady, and mounted the horse with growing confidence. "Easy," the cowboy said, standing beside her. "Feel the rhythm. Let the horse guide you, not the other way around." She nodded, gripping the reins. I think I can do it today." "You can," he said quietly, a faint smile brushing his lips.
You've learned well.
The horse shifted, muscles rippling beneath her. She laughed softly, a clear, unfamiliar sound that carried across the fields. The wind caught it, and for a moment, the memory of the town's jeers felt distant, like a shadow she no longer belonged to. "Did you just laugh?" he asked, voice low, teasing but warm. "I did," she admitted, cheeks flushing. "It feels different out here." "Good," he said. "Laughter suits you. Don't let them steal it back." They rode side by side, the plains stretching endlessly. The cowboy's presence was steady, guiding without pressure, offering lessons through gentle instruction rather than words of command. "Watch the cattle by the creek," he said, pointing to a small herd grazing near the water. "They move quietly, but don't let them wander too far." She urged her horse forward, observing the animals, noticing their subtle shifts in posture, listening to the soft clatter of hooves against grass. They're calmer than the town," she said softly, almost to herself. "That's because they're honest," he replied. "No judgment. No cruelty. Only what is." Her gaze softened, eyes tracing the sunlight on the animals' backs. I feel capable," she admitted, voice barely above the breeze. "You are," he said. "You've done well today. All of this, the work, the care, you've earned it." Later, she sat beside the campfire, flames reflecting in her eyes. The lanterns hung in the barn behind them, glowing warmly, casting shadows that danced across the wooden walls. She folded her worn shawl neatly beside her, noticing how it had transformed from a shield into a simple comfort. "You've made this place yours," he said, voice quiet, not intruding. I think I have," she whispered, tracing a finger along the fire's edge. It's different from the town. I can breathe here." He nodded. "And you deserve to breathe." The wind carried distant laughter, children playing near the fence line, but she didn't flinch. She had learned to let it pass, to keep the moment she was in untouched by whispers she could no longer control. "I fixed the tool you left in the barn," she said, holding up a hammer. "I think it's better than before." He examined it, lifting the edge, testing its balance. "Not bad," he said, eyebrows raising. "Better than before, definitely. You're careful and precise." I wanted to make it right," she said softly.
You did, he said.
"That's what counts. Attention, care, and effort. Those are things no one can take away." Her hands brushed the wood of the tool, rough but steady. She felt pride, a new, strange weight in her chest that had nothing to do with the town or its opinions. The horses moved nearby, nuzzling gently, tails flicking. She reached out to one, stroking its mane. "It's peaceful," she murmured. "Peace is earned," he said, leaning against a post. "And you've earned plenty." Her laughter came again, soft but free, mingling with the crackle of the fire. I almost forgot this sound," she said, eyes shining in the firelight. "You never had to," he said. "It was always inside you. Just needed the right place to find it." Night settled over the ranch, stars emerging like scattered diamonds across the velvet sky. She sat in quiet reflection, thinking of the months past, rain-soaked humiliation, relentless whispers, cruel faces. The memories were still there, but they no longer ruled her. "You've changed," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Not because of me, but because you refuse to break."
I
"I think I'm learning," she admitted. "Learning to be me. And that's worth more than any approval they could give," he said. "Never forget it." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of hay and damp earth. She folded her shawl again, placing it beside the lantern. Symbolic, she realized, the old protection transformed into a simple comfort, reflecting the repair she felt inside. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered, voice steady. "You shouldn't be," he said, voice low. "The world's harsh enough. Don't let them take what you've built here." The child from the town appeared at the fence again, shyly waving. She waved back, heart-warming. Connection had grown slowly, tentative but real. The memory of scorn had faded, replaced with quiet trust, the bond with the cowboy, and the calm of the land. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly when the child disappeared. The cowboy nodded, gazed toward the horizon. "You've come a long way. There's more ahead, but you're ready." The next morning, they rode side by side again, the plains glowing in gold and amber light. She felt the rhythm of the horse beneath her, wind tangling her hair, heart light. "You're strong," she said, voice soft. "Not just in work, but in here," she added, pressing a hand to her chest. "You already were," he said. "You just needed a place to see it." The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. She rode beside him, chest open, shoulders squared. Laughter, work, care, and trust had rebuilt her slowly, brick by brick. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine the future, not the town's cruel whispers, but freedom, dignity, and hope stretching as far as the plains themselves. The wind carried warmth, the horses' hooves beat a steady rhythm, and she felt alive in a way the town had never allowed. Side by side, into the golden sunset, she rode, heart steady, hope rising. The town hall smelled of dust, wood, and faint ink. She stepped onto the creaking floor, shawl folded neatly over her arm, documents clutched tightly in her hands. Faces turned toward her, curious, wary, some sneering, others shocked. What are you doing here?" A man stammered, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I'm here to settle this," she said, voice steady, echoing across the room. Every eye was on her, and she straightened, shoulders squared. The sheriff cleared his throat, shifting uneasily. He looked down at his boots, then back at her. "Go on, miss." She met his gaze, calm. "Miss Carter," she said, "I believe it's time everyone understood the truth." Murmurs swept through the room. She could feel their skepticism, their doubt. Yet beneath it, she sensed a tension, a fragile thread of curiosity. One of the town bullies blurted, voice cracking. "I didn't think anyone could own." "You didn't think anyone could own the property," she said softly, turning to face them. "It's legal. All these documents," she lifted the papers, "prove it. The estate is mine." A gasp ran through the hall. Faces went pale. Eyes darted from her to the sheriff, who awkwardly stepped aside, clearing space. This can't be," the man stammered, voice trembling. We didn't know." "You should have known," she said, voice calm but firm. "Rumors, lies, and ridicule don't change reality. What's true is true." The cowboy stood behind her, silent and steady, a protective presence. She felt a flicker of gratitude, but held her head high, letting dignity lead. You've tricked us," another voice accused, softer this time. "No," she said, voice steady. "I didn't trick anyone. I followed the law, and I acted honestly. It's your assumptions, your cruelty, that were mistaken." Faces shifted, disbelief mingling with dawning understanding. One woman whispered, "All this time, we judged her wrong." "Yes," she said softly, glancing around. "All this time. And now, the truth is here. I am the owner." The humiliation I suffered was unnecessary. The sheriff cleared his throat again, hands behind his back. She's right, he admitted. The documents are valid. The property belongs to Miss Carter. Murmurs grew louder. Some turned pale, shame flickering across their faces. Others whispered to neighbors, struggling to reconcile past judgments with present reality. I'm sorry, a young man said, voice tight. We never should have. She lifted a hand, stopping him. I do not seek revenge, she said. I could remind you of every insult, every laugh at my expense, but I will not. Today is about truth, not retaliation. The room fell silent, the weight of her words pressing in. Her cheeks flushed slightly, not with shame but with a calm authority she had never known she could possess. I can't believe it, the first man whispered again, shaking. We mocked, we were wrong. You were wrong, she agreed, voice gentle, and acknowledging it is the first step toward moving forward. I hope you choose to do so. The town bullies looked down, embarrassed, forced to reckon with the cruelty they had inflicted. No one dared speak further. The room seemed smaller now, filled with quiet realization. The cowboy placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, and she felt strength in his presence without needing words. She straightened, lifting the documents higher, letting the papers speak the truth louder than any voice could. I am not bitter, she said, voice soft but clear. I carry no anger today. I stand here knowing my worth, not through revenge, but through honesty, courage, and perseverance. I hope you can respect that. Some nodded, shame mingled with respect. Others whispered, unsure what to say, silence heavy in the hall. She breathed slowly, savoring the moment, letting her chest expand with dignity reclaimed. You, one of the older men said, voice trembling. You've handled this with grace. Grace is earned through trials, she said. Through the cruelty endured, the patience cultivated, and the kindness offered even when it was undeserved. That is what brings me here today. The cowboy remained behind her, eyes calm, gaze steady. She glanced at him briefly, grateful, but let the town see only her strength. The documents were hers, the humiliation replaced by authority. A soft murmur of acceptance spread through the room. Some townspeople bowed heads slightly, others exchanged hesitant glances. The power dynamics had shifted completely, yet she held herself with measured compassion. I didn't know, whispered a man near the back, voice barely audible. Now you do, she said simply. Let that knowledge guide your actions in the future. She turned, slowly walking toward the door, each step firm and deliberate. The sunlight streamed through the windows, warming her face, casting long shadows that mirrored the journey she had endured. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of dust and earth, the plains stretching wide and golden. She clutched the documents tightly, chest swelling with quiet pride. Her past humiliation was no longer a chain but a memory, tempered by strength, courage, and calm authority. The cowboy fell and stepped beside her, silent but unwavering. She glanced at him briefly, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. You've done well, he said softly.
So have you, she replied.
Together, they stepped onto the sunlit street, leaving the town hall behind. She felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the steady rhythm of self-assurance. The town had learned, the bullies humbled, and her dignity restored. The golden sunset painted the horizon, warm and endless. She raised her chin, shoulders squared, and let the wind tug gently at her hair. For the first time in years, she felt complete, at peace with her worth, and ready to face whatever the future might bring. The documents in her hands were more than proof of ownership. They were proof of survival, resilience, and dignity reclaimed. The cowboy remained at her side, and together they walked into the sunset, the plains vast and welcoming, a horizon full of hope and quiet triumph. The morning sun spilled over the plains, casting gold across the fields. She adjusted her boots and smoothed her repaired dress, hands moving with care. The barn doors creaked as she stepped inside, lantern casting a warm glow across hay and tools. "Morning," the cowboy said, tipping his hat slightly. "Cattle need checking before the heat sets in." "I'm ready," she replied, voice calm, steady. She grabbed the bucket and led the horse toward the fence line. "You've come far," he said quietly, walking beside her. "Not just in skill, but in everything else." She glanced at him, a small smile tugging her lips. I feel stronger now. Safer, too." "That's good," he said. "You deserve that." The child from town appeared at the fence, clutching a small basket of apples. "I brought these for the horses," the child said shyly. "Thank you," she said softly, taking the basket. She bent to place the fruit near the feed trough, watching the animals eat.
"See?
They appreciate kindness." "They do," the cowboy replied, voice low. "And so do those who notice it." She laughed quietly, brushing hay from her sleeve. "I almost forgot how to enjoy this, quiet moments, simple things." "You haven't forgotten," he said. "You've remembered the right way." As the day progressed, she helped mend fences, gather eggs, and feed the animals. Each task was completed with confidence, hands sure, movements deliberate. The barn smelled faintly of hay and lantern oil, the warmth wrapping around her like reassurance. "You've got a good rhythm," he said, leaning against a post, arms crossed. "It's impressive." "Thank you," she said, cheeks warming. It feels natural now.
Not forced.
Not frightening. A wagon rolled past the ranch road. She paused, watching it carefully. The townspeople peeked briefly, some nodding awkwardly, their whispers silenced by her calm presence. "They're noticing," the cowboy said softly. "They respect what they see. Quiet strength carries far." "I hope so," she murmured. "I don't want attention for its own sake, just understanding." "Understanding will come," he said. "And it will matter more than you think." Later, she sat by the campfire, polishing boots, the lantern flickering nearby. The glow reflected in her eyes, warmth soft against the evening chill. "You've grown," he said, voice low, almost hidden in the firelight. "Not just in work, but in patience, courage, and heart." "I've learned," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "To trust.
To care.
To feel safe in the right company." "You've earned it," he replied. "No one else could have given it to you, and no one else should." She looked out across the ranch, children playing near the fence, animals grazing, wind sweeping through the fields. "It feels alive," she said softly. "I didn't know life could feel like this. Quiet, steady, welcoming." "It does," he said, nodding. "When you let it. When you claim it." Evening descended, painting the sky in gold and rose. She stood on a hill overlooking the ranch, wind tugging gently at her hair. The lanterns glowed softly below, illuminating stalls, feed, and the careful work she had done. "Look at it," he said quietly, standing beside her. "All of this, your care, your patience, your strength, it belongs to you." She held the reins loosely, eyes sweeping the plains. "It does," she murmured. "And I feel worthy of it now." "You are," he said simply. "Every bit of it. Never doubt that." A soft laugh escaped her, free and unburdened. "I almost forgot this sound," she said, voice carrying on the wind. "It's so light, warm." "That's because it's yours," he said. "Not borrowed. Not forced. Yours alone." The children waved from below, their laughter mingling with the low rustle of animals and the distant creek. She waved back, heart swelling. Connection, patience, and kindness had created something enduring. "You've done well," he said, voice calm. "More than you know." She turned toward him briefly, smiling. "So have you," she said. "For staying, for guidance, for everything." The sky deepened into twilight, golden hues fading into soft lavender. She folded her shawl, placed the lantern near the barn, and stepped onto the hill once more. The wind tugged gently at her dress, carrying scents of hay, earth, and distant rain. "I feel complete," she whispered, chest swelling with warmth. "Safe, strong and hopeful. "You've earned it," he said, voice quiet but steady. "And you'll keep it if you hold it close." She turned her gaze to the horizon, sun dipping low, casting long shadows over fields and fences. Polished boots gleamed faintly in the lantern light, her dress repaired, shawl neatly folded. Each symbol marked a chapter of her recovery, each task a step toward dignity. "Life can be quiet and good," she murmured, voice calm. "I can stay here and feel peace."
"And you will," he said.
"Step by step, moment by moment. This place, these people, these animals, they're part of your life now." She exhaled slowly, letting the wind brush her face, letting the plains stretch endlessly before her. The town, the humiliation, the whispers, all felt distant, irrelevant against the calm and care of the ranch.
I'm
grateful," she said softly. "For the land, for the animals, she glanced at the cowboy. "For you." "No need to say more," he said, tipping his hat lightly. "You've said enough through your actions." She smiled, gaze lifting to the sky. The golden light of sunset washed over her, the plains stretching wide, the barn glowing softly below. She felt strength, dignity, and a quiet hope she had never known in the town. The wind tugged at her hair, brushing gently across her cheeks. She stood tall, chest open, heart light. The ranch was alive, vibrant, hers, not by inheritance alone, but through courage, patience, and perseverance. She took a final deep breath, holding the moment, letting warmth seep through every part of her. Life had changed. The past humiliation was replaced with calm authority. The future stretched bright, wide, and welcoming. The cowboy walked beside her silently. Words were unnecessary now. Trust, respect, and companionship carried more weight than any declaration could. Together, they looked across the plains, the sun slipping below the horizon, golden light spilling across the land. She felt peace, hope, and quiet joy. The world was vast, but for the first time, she felt wholly, undeniably at home.